The former Eskom executive, Matshela Koko, and 7 co-accused will return to court on the 23rd of March of next year. They were granted bail yesterday in the Middelburg Magistrate's Court in connection with a multi-million-rand irregular contract linked to the Kusile power plant in Mpumalanga. The 8 suspects face charges of fraud and money laundering. Their bail conditions include being barred from leaving the country or their province of residence without the permission of the investigating officer. They're also required to report to a police station once a week.
The investigating director, Advocate Andrea Johnson, says that this arrest is about accountability and the rule of law. We must execute the NPA's constitutional mandate for justice, and it is imperative for the country and its people that we serve without fear, favor, or prejudice. Late last night, Eskom former interim chief executive Matshela Koko, Eskom project director at Kusile, Hlupheka Sithole, business person Watson Siswai, former SA Local Government Association chief executive Thabo Mokoena were granted 300,000 rand bail each, while Mr. Koko's wife and 2 daughters, as well as former lawyer Johannes Kotsia, were granted 70,000 rand bail earlier.
For more on this, we're joined by Open Secrets Head of Research, Michael Marchant. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. The net is closing in on the suspects of state capture. I mean, just listening to the NPA spokesperson, Cindy Siwa Sabuka, she says that the case really revolves around accountability and the rule of law. I mean, what's your take?
Morning, Paul. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I think it is incredibly welcome news, and I certainly agree with the spokesperson that it's a victory, I think, for the rule of law and for justice for state capture. I'm sure that South Africans, I think, around the country right now are rightly angry about living through another year of almost consistent rolling blackouts. And although we cannot put that solely at the door of one person, Matshela Koko, or the other people in this specific indictment, I think we do need to remember that aside from some of the structural issues, one of the massive problems there has been at Eskom over many years was state capture, rampant corruption, and particularly in those years where Matshela Koko was interim CEO, the repurposing of Eskom as a state institution to serve essentially the Gupta family and its network of companies, and in this case, a series of other people linked to those executives. And so it's incredibly welcome news. I think it's likely one of the first of a number of cases that will be brought around Eskom. And I think it will be a priority area for the prosecuting authority.
Swiss company ABB forms a massive part of this case. What other entities may perhaps be added as the investigations get underway?
So, as you said in the introduction, this specific case actually concerns only one contract at Kusile. Kusile being one of the power plants that's seen really massive overspend and overrun in terms of the build, which again has affected the grid. And in this case, what we have is the allegation that the contract was manipulated by Koko and others at Eskom to ensure that ABB, the Swiss multinational, got the lucrative contract. And then very much like the modus operandi for state capture more broadly, once that large multinational had the contract, there were a series of local companies that were appointed as supply development partners and other actors. And in this case, the allegation is that those companies were owned by Koko's wife and stepdaughters and other members of the family. I think what we would want to see, particularly from Open Secret side in this case, as we've called for in other cases linked to state capture, is that the company ultimately responsible for paying the money in terms of the contract, being paid the money in terms of the contract, ABB. In fact, there should be careful consideration to add it to the charge sheet and bring charges against it. Now, we've seen, for example, in the Transnet case that the MPA has been acting on recently, that McKinsey, another large multinational implicated in state capture, was added right towards the end. And I think it's imperative that for all of these large state capture cases, that the large corporations based in South Africa, but also based around the world, are also brought to book and that criminal charges are brought against them. ABB has paid back, I think, over 1.5 billion rand in a civil settlement to Eskom, essentially admitting that it was overpaid grossly for contracts linked to Kusile, not just this one. And so I think that there's strong evidence that it has a criminal case to answer to as well.
Yesterday, as I was speaking to the NPA, Cindy Sibuka was very clear to emphasize that this matter didn't have much to do with the Zondo Commission's work. Perhaps let's go into the Zondo Commission's work and what it may have concluded about Matshela Koko's role at Eskom and how this case then fits into it.
So it's absolutely true, and I think it is welcome to see the NPA bringing these cases when they are ready to do so. And so there was no reason for the NPA to wait for the Zondo Commission, and for this case to be ready to go now, I think is incredibly welcome. What we should remember, because I think it foreshadows possible things to come, is that the Zondo Commission concluded that Matshela Koko essentially had become a key agent of Gupta interest at Eskom, that he was in regular contact with Salim Essa and other people in the Gupta network, and that he was a key element in, as I said at the beginning, repurposing Eskom essentially and large-scale contracts to benefit the Gupta enterprise. One of the most important findings in this regard by the Zondo Commission relates to the purchase of Optimum Coal Mine by Tegeta. And the Zondo Commission in that regard found that Matshela Koko's account of the unlawful prepayment that he and others authorized at Eskom for 1.68 billion rand that then allowed the Gupta-linked Tegeta to purchase Optimum Coal, that he played a key role in that regard and should answer for it. Now, just to bring this into the context of the broader National Prosecuting Authority strategy, we should remember that they've successfully had a preservation order placed on Optimum Coal Mine, and they earlier this year applied to court to have the entire business of Optimum Coal forfeited to the state, saying that it was purchased with the proceeds of crime. And so I think if there is a criminal case, and surely there will be one brought in relation to what happened around Tegeta and Optimum Coal, I think there's reason to expect that Matshela Koko, Anoj Singh, and other executives who were implicated there in the findings of the Zondo Commission may have a case to answer for.
Very well. Let me thank you for your time and input. Open Secrets Head of Research, Michael Marchant, speaking to us there about the deliberations at Eskom and, of course, the arrest that we saw regarding Matshela Koko and some of his family members.